Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar arranged by EyeRIS. And um, I'm Fatma, a final year medical student at King Edward Medical Universities, and I'm one of the co-founders of the ophthalmology interest group EyeRIS. And I thank you all for joining us today for this webinar on corneal transplant awareness. It's truly an honor to have such a distinguished group of participants from all over the world. And we'll discuss this important matter today. And today we'll talk about the current state of corneal transplant practices in Pakistan and worldwide, and also the challenges of donor recruitment and overcoming the cultural and systemic barriers in Pakistan and other countries. And before we begin, I would like to express our deepest gratitude to our esteemed panel of speakers whose dedication and contribution to ophthalmology inspires us all. We're honored to have with us Dr. Matharu, who's Assistant Professor of Ophthalmology at University of Iowa. And he's also the co-director for the UI Global Eye Program. Next, we have Professor Dr. Asad Aslam Khan, who's the former administrator of the Human Organ Transplant Authority, Punjab. And he's also the provisional head for prevention of blindness. And next, we have our very esteemed graduate of King Edward Medical University, Dr. Noor-us-Sabah Ahmad, who is the best graduate of King Edward Medical University and is now the resident of ophthalmology at University of Iowa. We also have with us Professor Sultan, who's the head founder and vice chairman, Lylepool Eye Trust, and Mr. Greg, who's head of research development at the Lions Eye Bank in Iowa. We also have Dr. Sidra, assistant professor of ophthalmology at Mayo Hospital, Lahore, but unfortunately she couldn't join us today. So Dr. Asad will be filling in her position. So now I'll hand it over to Hamad, who will give you guys a brief introduction of EyeRIS, and then we can officially start with today's webinar. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Fatma. That was a wonderful introduction. So just to give everyone a brief overview what EyeRIS is and what we're doing here. EyeRIS is basically an ophthalmology interest group. It's a student-led interest group at King Edward Medical University. And our vision is to foster collaboration in the field of ophthalmology, because in King Edward Medical University and in Pakistan in general, ophthalmology is an allied health specialty. And we believe that much more attention is needed towards the growing eye health problems within Pakistan. And we feel that from the get-go, we inculcate students into the program and make them interested into the field of ophthalmology. There is much to achieve in the field of ophthalmology in Pakistan. So the goals that we've set out for us are, we aim to connect King Edward Medical University students with our faculty and alumni, the eminent faculty and alumni who've done wonders in the field of ophthalmology, both in Pakistan as well as internationally. We have Professor Asad Aslam, a man who needs no introduction at all. He's done wonders in the field of ophthalmology in Pakistan. We had Dr. Sidra, who's helped us on this journey, Dr. Noor-us-Sabah, as well as Dr. Salaman, who really guided us through this journey of setting up EyeRIS. Additionally, we aim to bring greater attention towards the role that students can play in the field of ophthalmology in order to address the growing burden of eye disease, as I mentioned already. Additionally, the purpose of EyeRIS is also to foster research and to improve patient outcomes with the goal of utilizing the Institute of Ophthalmology and Institute of Preventive Ophthalmology at Mayo Hospital, which are two of the busiest eye centers within the country. Just a brief introduction of Dr. Noor-us-Sabah. She is currently first-year ophthalmology resident at the University of Iowa in the United States. And she was also awarded the Pride of Pakistan Award by the government of Pakistan in 2022 for her educational achievements and for using her platform to advocate for girls' education in Pakistan. And currently, she is an ARVO Science Communication Training Fellow for the year 2024 and 2025. She has played a pivotal role in arranging this webinar, and I'll hand it over to her now. We're really grateful to have you, Dr. Noor-us-Sabah, and we're hopeful to have a very insightful session, inshallah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the introduction. So before we start, and our esteemed speakers will be telling us more about this, but just in brief overview of what exactly are corneal transplants and why do we even do them? Why do we need them? And so going from there, A corneal transplant basically is a procedure in which you remove a diseased or unhealthy cornea. And just an overview, I know you all are, most of you are med students, but in case somebody doesn't remember, the cornea is just the clear, transparent part of the front of the eye. And in a corneal transplant, you remove the diseased or unhealthy cornea and replace it with a healthy donor cornea. We'll talk more about where that donor cornea comes from, but before we do that, there are certain conditions that can cause your cornea to become damaged, leading to vision impairment or even blindness. These include injuries or infections, some of the major causes in developing countries. Keratoconus is a disease that can damage the cornea. Inherited eye diseases like Fuchs dystrophy can also damage the cornea. And then, especially in developing countries like Pakistan, vitamin A deficiency in children can also cause corneal blindness in people. And so when something is causing the cornea to be opaque or causing a corneal opacity or making it less clear, that's when you're not getting enough light into your eye, and that can cause vision impairment and blindness. And so for that, what we do in a corneal transplant is take off that diseased cornea, replace it with a healthy one. You could completely remove the entire cornea, or you could just remove an unhealthy layer and replace it with just a thin, healthy layer. And it's remarkable because the cornea is just 0.5 millimeters thick. And in surgeries where you replace only one layer of the cornea, you're basically replacing a layer that's about 10 microns thick. So almost even thinner than a human hair. So it's remarkable how advanced these surgeries are and how impactful they are and how much they can help somebody by reversing blindness or vision impairment for that patient. And so why are we talking about corneal donation in Pakistan? Why is that important? So as I mentioned, the cornea that comes from a healthy person, that actually comes from a deceased donor. So unlike other organs such as kidneys or a liver transplant, for example, where you have a live donor who can give you that organ, for corneal donation, the way that we do it is obtain that tissue from a person who has passed away. And the corneal tissue actually remains viable for a longer time versus other organs that need to be connected to a blood supply in order to remain viable. The cornea is relatively avascular, which means it doesn't have a really significant blood supply, so it can remain viable even after death, which is when we can obtain corneal tissue from a donor and use that to replace a diseased cornea in a person who actually needs it. And so just some facts about why this is important to talk about. Why do we need to do this webinar? About 5.2 million people in Pakistan suffer from some form of visual impairment, and about 2 million people are legally blind. And in Pakistan, corneal blindness is the second leading cause of blindness, which is a huge burden of disease. And currently in Pakistan, there are more than 300,000 or 3 lakh people who are on the waiting list for a corneal transplant but do not have access to it. And a huge issue here is the lack of sufficient corneal tissue in Pakistan and the lack of sufficient infrastructure and local corneal donation. So currently, and our speakers will be talking about this more, currently most of the corneal tissue in Pakistan comes from tissue that is donated from abroad, from countries like the US and Sri Lanka, and that can be really expensive. There are a lot of issues associated with that we will talk about more in our webinar. And we really need to work towards making Pakistan self-sufficient and being able to locally source our tissue. We have a population over 240 million. That should theoretically not be a problem, but there are several barriers in that journey that we'll talk about more in this webinar. And we'll find out how we as med students, as trainees, as people interested in promoting eye health in Pakistan, how we can help and play our part in overcoming those barriers. So just some lack of infrastructure, funding issues, religious and cultural perceptions are some of the barriers, and we'll be talking about them more. And then with this, I will introduce our next speaker, Dr. Asad Aslam Khan. He will be also presenting in place of Dr. Sidra, who is, as we mentioned, one of the best graduates of King Edward Medical University who could not be here. So I'll let Dr. Asad Aslam stand in for her to share her part. And as we mentioned a bit earlier, but Dr. Asad Aslam, he truly needs no introduction. He's a legend in the field of ophthalmology in Pakistan, currently Professor Emeritus at King Edward Medical University and College of Ophthalmology and Allied Vision Sciences. He is the provincial coordinator of Punjab for the Prevention of Blindness program and member of the World Health Organization SPECS 2030 program. He has over 39 years of experience in ophthalmology, has received numerous national and international awards during his illustrious career, including the very prestigious Sitara Imtiaz Award and the Eye Health Hero Award. During his tenure as the national coordinator for the prevention of blindness, the rate of blindness in Pakistan reduced by half. The number of cataract surgeries performed doubled, and trachoma was eliminated from the country. Thank you so much, sir, for taking your valuable time to join and share your valuable experience. With that, I'll let you share your screen so that you can present some of the part that Dr. Sidra was going to tell us about, which includes the general process of corneal donation and how tissue is obtained, distributed, and what can we do to help.
Thank you very much, Dr. Noor, for this introduction. My only introduction and my only qualification is that I am class fellow of Dr. Fawad. I am junior house surgeon of Dr. Sultan sir. He was 1 year senior to me. Sultan sir, Assalamu alaikum. And it is good to see Dr. Mehta. I heard a lot about Dr. Mehta. I always wish to meet him when I come to States. So let me present the talk on behalf of Dr. Sidra Latif. Can you share the slides?
Yes. So do you want to share it from your screen or should I share it from mine?
Okay, that meant. I think you can share.
Okay. Just give me a minute to pull them up. Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much. As Dr. Noor had already briefed about some of the factors about corneal transplant, what is corneal transplant. So just for the students, for their introduction, that what is corneal transplant? This is basically a changing disease cornea with a donor tissue. And like other organ transplantation, cornea doesn't need cross-matching before transplant. That is the only advantage in cornea transplantation is that we don't need to go for cross-matching before cornea is avascular and it is immune-privileged organ. Next, please. There are 5 layers of cornea, starting from front, behind, epithelium, Bowman's membrane, stroma, Descemet membrane, and endothelium. And now a 6th layer has been claimed by Dr. Noor, must be knowing that, by Dr. Harminder Singh Dua, who is working as corneal specialist in Nottingham, UK, that he has introduced a 6th layer of cornea that is just before the Descemet membrane. So that is called Dua's layer. So in 5 books, it is mentioned 5 layers, but now if you go to read the Konsky, the Dua layers as 6 layers has been mentioned. Next, please. So there are different types of keratoplasties at corneal transplant. Previously, it was only we have to remove whole thickness, replace or transplant whole thickness of the cornea. That is called full thickness keratoplasty. All the 5 layers of the cornea are taken from the donor and stitched to the host bed. Now, with the great progress, advent, and scientific advancement in corneal diseases and corneal transplant surgery, now, next please. Now, we can transplant layers of the cornea. That is called lamellar keratoplasty. So instead of transplanting or replacing all the 5 layers, we replace 2 or 3 layers of the cornea. That is, different layers of the cornea can be used for lamellar transplant. Lamellar transplant help one donor cornea to be used for 2 patients, in addition to superior visual prognosis and lesser rejection rates. And this may be anterior lamellar transplant, it may be deep lamellar transplant, that is called DELG, it may be DISAC, posterior lamellar transplant, it may be Descemet membrane endothelium keratoplasty, that is known as DMAC. So with the advancement in corneal transplant, so instead of transplanting whole of the cornea, we now replace few layers of the cornea, and one cornea can be used for 2 patients. Next, please. So donor corneas, where do they come from? The donor cornea come from people who have died. So this is the condition in which we can't remove the eye from a living person. So this is removed from a dead person. But cornea from cadavers with unknown cause of death are not used. And cornea from patients with an eye disease, transmissible or progressive disease, are also not used for corneal transplant. Next, please. In Pakistan, if we talk about at Mayo Hospital, so since 2018, we have done 510 keratoplasties, and all of them were full thickness keratoplasty. In year 22 and 23, we did less number of keratoplasties because 22 was a COVID period and 23 was also overlapped by COVID, and we started the renovation of our department. So on an average, about 100 corneal transplants are done at Mayo Hospital, and 100% of them, they have been provided by doctors Fawad Zafar. Next, please. The patient currently registered for transplantation, the patient currently registered about 300 plus at Mayo Hospital. And current donation we are receiving from mainly from Zafar Foundation. And the source, we have a very almost less than 1% source from Sri Lanka, and that was well before 2015. And since 2015, we haven't received a donation from Sri Lanka, and we are receiving only the cornea from USA through the Zafar Foundation since 2017 onward. Next, please. Now, coming to the current today's topic, that is the process of donor retrieval. When to retrieve, what is retrieved, and who retrieved the donor tissue. So when to retrieve, as soon as possible after death, within 8 to 12 hours, if the body is kept cool. If the body is not kept cool, usually in Pakistan it is retrieved within 6 hours of time. So what is removed? Whole eyeball is removed from the cadaver, and a person adapt in enucleation. Usually the doctors, they go do the enucleation here in Pakistan. Next, please. Important things to consider are the consent of the diseased person before death, and the patient will override the relative. In the absence of a pledge will, relatives can donate. And the take consent for the ocular tissue, blood sample, and medical history, and apprise the relative that a tissue suitability for the human transplantation versus research use will be decided later after the tissue analysis. And then the retrieval is done. Next, please. After the retrieval, eyeball is suspended in a moist chamber, and tissue transplant box has a controlled temperature of 4 degrees to transport the retrieved eyeball to eye bank. And the cosmetic appearance of the donor, the volume lost from the orbit is maintained with a cotton and plastic eye caps over the cotton. Lids closed over the eyes cap to restore the normal profile of the eyelid. Next, please. So anatomical and cosmetic considerations in donor. So this is how the empty socket is held that full by putting the cotton and then putting the shell, plastic shell over the cotton. Next, please. The cotton wool or ball implant can maintain the volume, and plastic eye caps maintain profile of the eyelid. Next, please. So what happens to the tissue when it is sent to the eye bank? Next, please. In a lamellar flow cabinet, corneal scleral rim is harvested from the eye. So a lamellar flow cabinet and the specular microscope and the refrigerator are the mandatory items of a corneal bank. Next, please. The corneal scleral rim hence retrieve is analyzed whether it is used for human transplantation if tissue passes the checkpoint. If found insufficient for transplantation, then tissue may be used for research purpose. Suppose if we see on the specular microscope that the tissue cell count is very less and it is not advisable to go for transplantation, so that tissue can be used for research purpose. Next, please. So iBanking working in Pakistan. So truly speaking, I must appreciate, I must tell the truth that so far the Liverpool I Trust Faisalabad under the able leadership of Professor Sultan is working in true spirit as a true iBank. We have established iBank at College of Ophthalmology and Allied Vision Sciences. There are iBank at Al-Shufa, iBank Rawalpindi, Pakistan Eye Banking Society, Karachi, and RRBT Eye Hospital, Karachi. So iBank is a non-profit organization working for collection, storage, and distribution of utilization of and donor cornea. Because for iBanking, we have to have hospital registered with Human Organ Transplant Authority that they can retrieve the corneas from the brain dead person or other parts of the body from the dead, brain dead person. The hospital has to be registered. And I believe so far it is only the Lailpur Eye Trust has got the Light Hospital registered with Human Organ Transplant Authority. And now another hospital in Punjab, that is the Gujranwala Medical College, it has also has started working on the line of Lailpur Trust Eye Hospital. And it really 2 days before we had a visit of the Human Organ Transplant Authority of College of Ophthalmology and Light Vision Science in Mayo Hospital. And we have also requested them that we will be also applying for retrieval of cornea by getting the Mayo Hospital registered. Next, please. So, interested, if anyone, medical students, their relative, their known person, if they are interested in corneal donation, so pledge today and save site. Send your email at donatecornea.covis@gmail.com. Next, please.
Okay. I think that's
Thank you very much.
end of the PowerPoint. Thank you so much, Dr. Asad, for sharing that. That's very important information. And just to summarize for our attendees, like he said, we don't need to match the tissue between people so that if we obtain corneal tissue from somebody, it can actually go to anybody who needs a sight-saving procedure. So that's very unique, and this small intervention technically can change somebody's life for sure. So that's very important to know. Dr. Asad, I have several questions for you. You have over 40 years of experience in ophthalmology in Pakistan. You've seen the field of ophthalmology progress through various stages in Pakistan. What have been some of the major efforts in establishing eye banking in Pakistan, and what have the barriers been due to which Pakistan is still not self-sufficient in corneal transplantation?
The barrier is the lack of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Second, there is no consensus among the religious scholars.
Mm-hmm.
They do not come on one single platform. I'll give you one example. In 2015, I arranged a seminar on corneal donation. I invited the three renowned religious scholars at that time, and they promised to come. And can you believe, the 3 days before the seminar, one went to Iran, one said that I am sick, and one had some emergent commitment. So all of them, they didn't come. And in 2019, I had again a seminar. I invited a very renowned religious scholar, and with the purpose that he will say in the he will say to the audience that you should donate the organ to other. But at the end, when I asked him, he said, "Yes, we have to sit down. We have to develop a consensus." Though I told that there are fatwa of Al-Jamia al-Azhar and other Saudi religious scholars, but this was the situation. I'm telling you what happened to me at Mayo Hospital and College of Ophthalmology. Second, mistrust and misbelief. That people think that when they will be, whether, I don't know whether they will be in heaven or hell, when wherever one will go, they can't see the others. This is such a strong belief that if when they will be rising on the day of final day, they will not be able to see others. They will not be able to see their relative there. So this is a mistrust. Mistrust. Third, there is a lack of awareness among them. And fourthly, we do not have any system where we can invite all those who are recipient for any organ. They can come on the TV, on the electronic media, and the print media, and they can convey message to the other people that this is the benefit I got from the tissue transplant. I'm living after liver transplant. I'm living after kidney transplant. I'm seeing after corneal transplant. So no one ever come. So even we have been so far, we have been unable to involve the celebrities to advocate to do advocacy for a corneal transplant. So these are the few issues, but I'm sure that Professor Sultan will throw much more light on this because he is very well engaged in the tissue retrieval nowadays. So this is my response to your first question.
Thank you so much, Dr. Asad. That's very important to know and very insightful. I agree. There's a huge part of why we are doing this webinar is to address some of those misconceptions and address some of those inconsistencies among some of the religious leaders in Pakistan. We know from like several other countries and religious leaders and major religious leaders from various sects within the Muslim community have actually promoted or donation of corneal donation and corneal transplants, but there's a lag within some of the leaders within Pakistan and a lag within this sphere where there is exactly a lack of consensus. And I agree with the lack of awareness. My next question.
One more thing.
Yes.
We have been unable to convince the government the economical impact of the blindness because we have to tell the policymakers that what is the impact of one blind person, because one blind person needs 3 carers from morning, evening, night. And that carer can't go to his school, can't go to his job, can't go to his village, can't go to his any type of work. So that is the economical loss we are having because of corneal blindness.
That's a very good point. That like this is just technically like a very reversible. A lot of like causes of corneal blindness are actually reversible by a transplant, and we can make such a big impact just by trying to promote this more and overcoming this barrier. What are some of the organizations in Pakistan that are currently working to overcome this and currently working to establish corneal donation? And what have the efforts so far been? And what do you think what the future would look like for those organizations and those efforts?
We are in the process of establishing a corneal bank across the country. And we are very much in contact with our site of USA, Michigan, You are very well aware of that center. So the Mr. Colin Rose, he came couple of times to Pakistan, and we had a couple of meetings established to establish Corneal Bank, and we got it approved from the federal ministry through the National Committee of Eye Health. When I was chairing as national chairman of National Committee for Eye Health in year 2016, we got that approved that there will be eye banks established across the country in different leading institutions of the country, and our side would help. And they came and they donated a handsome number of equipment to Al-Shafa Trust Eye Hospital, Rawalpindi, and they are expecting us at College of Ophthalmology to establish a corneal bank, and similarly in Faisalabad, in Peshawar, and in Karachi. So we are in the process of establishing, but we are moving very slow. The reason is because what is the purpose of having eye banks? If what is the purpose of having a bank if there is no money? What is the purpose of having eye bank if there is no tissue, corneal tissue? Because our corneal bank was established in year 2009 at College of Ophthalmology. We had specular microscope, we had lamellar cabinet airflow, we had refrigerator, purpose-built refrigerator for corneal, and what we are doing that we are using that corneal bank only to save or store the cornea received from USA, from Dr. Zafar Foundation, till we transport it to the operation theater. That is not being used for retrieval process that we are using, that people are coming to us, that we are donating our cornea, pre-register us. We are open to registration, but that corneal bank is without cornea.
That's very unfortunate, and that's very important to know that even though we have the infrastructure, we have the
Yes.
ability to retrieve those corneas, major barriers that people are not signing up for donation. We're not able to motivate our masses and our public enough to sign up for corneal donation, which is why I think it's very important for all of you in the audience, your medical students, your trainees, you understand this situation. We don't have to convince you to tell you that blindness causes a significant impact. And as Dr. Matharu just said in the chat, that corneal blindness specifically affects young people in their prime working age. So that economic impact and that impact on our country as a whole is very significant. And it's very important for all of us to understand that this intervention and just like talking to people about this, motivating our friends, family, our patients, the public, and understanding that signing up to be a corneal donor can have such a huge impact on a person. You are basically changing somebody's life. And it's not just that one particular person, as Dr. Asad mentioned, there are 3 to 4 people within that family who are also impacted due to visual impairment of one of their family members. So that's very important to know. Dr. Asad, what message do you have for us as young trainees, as medical students? What can we do? How can we play our part in trying to do our best to overcome this barrier in Pakistan?
I think that before I answer this question, that we don't have only infrastructure, we have human resource. We have the other necessary things available to go for corneal, to have corneal donation and to pass on to the recipients. Coming to this question, my only message to all of you is that you are doing a wonderful job and you must keep it up. And this is the way we can spread awareness to the people that, but you should add, I think you should add the videos or audio or video messages from those who have received the donation of organ donation, and they can explain very well as compared to other methods of awareness, because Dr. Fawad always used to get videos of the patient after surgery. So what is the impact of surgery on their life? So that is very helpful. That will be very helpful. So awareness, everyone should tell their families, and the other family members, they should tell to their friends, and the friends should tell to their families. And so this is how we can create awareness by saying the word to our friend, to our family, and by involving the patient who have received the donation, organ donation.
Thank you,
And
sir.
if possible, if anyone has any opportunity to engage religious scholars, so catch that opportunity in Pakistan.
Absolutely, sir. That's very helpful to know. Thank you so much. I agree. This is something that we can do as medical students, and with the help of our ophthalmology interest group, EyeRIS, like getting the message from patients across and disseminating that on social media, on whatever media platforms that we have, hoping that this would motivate other people to sign up for corneal donation. That's very important that you said that we have the infrastructure, we have the human resource, we are able to do this. The barrier is we need to motivate people to sign up for this. So that's very important to know. Our admins have also shared in the chat a link that provides a summary of Islamic rulings on organ transplantation and fatwas from several religious scholars that have mentioned that Islam encourages transplantation to people in need. Islam encourages helping humanity, saving lives, saving sight. And then somebody from our audience, Mr. Toki Abbas, mentioned Dow Organ Support Society. That would be amazing if you could also share a link within the audience. We would all love to attend that seminar on deceased organ donation and learn more through this process. So next, I will invite Dr. Kanwal Matharu to speak on this topic more. Dr. Matharu is currently a tenure-track assistant professor of cornea and refractive surgery at the University of Iowa, which is my residency program. And he has also been my mentor in global ophthalmology. He connected me to Dr. Fawad Zafar, and it was because of him that I realized the extent of the issue in Pakistan, which as a medical student, I was not aware of. And for me, that was, and that's why I feel so passionately about this. If I didn't know about this, I don't think that's acceptable. People, as medical students, we need to understand this issue more, and which is why we want to talk about this as well. And just going on to his introduction as well, I made a long detour in between. So he joined the University of Iowa after completing residency at the Baylor College of Medicine and 2 fellowships, first in cornea at the University of Pittsburgh, and second in global ophthalmology at Stanford. And currently he is the co-director of the University of Iowa Global Eye Program, and is passionate about studying and overcoming the barriers to care and providing the highest quality care to people locally and abroad. Joining him in his presentation would also be Mr. Greg Schmidt, who is the Director of Research and Business Development at the Iowa Lions Eye Bank and has extensive experience in global eye health. Recently, him and Dr. Matharu traveled to India to assist with eye banking development, and they will be sharing their experiences as well. So with that, Dr. Matharu, I'll let you talk more now.
Assalamu alaikum. Sat Sri Akal for my Punjabi people in the audience. I'm starting my timer. Thank you so much for having this webinar, Noor. Thank you for organizing it, to the entire EyeRIS team. Thank you for having it in English for this ABCD. I can't imagine learning ophthalmology in my second or third language, so all of you have my utmost respect. In my capacity as Noor's professor, Noor, please break down this picture, starting on this side, and then perhaps you could work your way up from here very briefly.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I see that tea kettle, so chai. I'm a chai fan, so that's the first thing I'm noticing. Right here, it's beautiful. I wish I had that. And then on the other side of the screen, I see some slit lamp photos of a cornea, looking at specular microscopy, which basically is a way to look at the endothelial layer, or basically the innermost layer of the cornea that has the endothelial cells.
Perfect. Our gold medalist has not failed us. Every cell counts. Thank you for that very kind introduction, and let's get to it. As I mentioned in the chat, transnational corneal donation is not a new issue. There's massive amount of need around the world, and the disheartening part is that 53% of patients who are cornea blind live in areas without a domestic supply. Many nations have established eye banks, but few have fully capacity and full sustainability, whether it is in terms of their donations or whether it is in terms of their economics or whether it is in terms of the supplies needed. As you saw in Professor Aslam's presentation, you need cornea media to store this. That was in short supply during COVID, for example. Noor wanted us to highlight the fact that, again, unlike other organs, there is no matching race, ethnicity, type, age. All of this we've studied in depth. HLA, all the complex molecular biology at play for other organs. You do not need to be on massive amounts of systemic immunosuppression for your duration after a corneal transplant. This is easy surgery from a medical perspective. 1961 was when transnational corneal donation activity began. There are altruistic impulses. There are also profiteering impulses that we need to be aware of. 3 countries provide 30% of the world's supply, and this raises ethical and moral questions everywhere in every aspect. I just highlighted the money here, but there are other complex nuances. We mentioned the US and Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka's story is very interesting. Italy was the third nation that was brought to my attention. So to import or not to import, that is the question, right? On the pros, there's massive amounts of need in many, many nations that do not have corneas available. If you're not doing the surgery, how can we teach medical students, ophthalmology residents, cornea surgeons internationally how to perform the surgery? In my space as a co-director of our group in Iowa, what I'm highlighting is to teach surgeons is one thing, but we also need to teach the scrub nurses. We also need to teach every part of the medical endeavor about cornea transplantation. Building capacity is important. And the group in Pakistan that has done just the most outstanding job, it's a talk in and of itself, the Zafar Foundation, which is a product of your own alumni. And through WhatsApp groups, Dr. Zafar started this incredible organization that has donated almost 8,000 corneas to Pakistan and Afghanistan. Pros are easy to address, and perhaps weighting it this way is inaccurate, and that's a function of PowerPoint, but just keep in mind that when we're sending corneas abroad, this was the reason perhaps why corneas from Sri Lanka are no longer coming so frequently. The quality is a little bit less than the tissue that we would implant as American surgeons in American patients. Autonomy, that the people of Pakistan should have autonomy over their own corneas. We shouldn't be sending them to somewhere else. When we're retrieving the corneas, do the patients know that we might be sending the corneas internationally? There's massive amounts of cost associated with all this transplants. But the unfortunate part is that without having your own institution, there's a long wait list that becomes unfortunate for a curable disease. I'm going to zip through this next part. I have about a minute. This is Dilganga Eye Hospital, a famous eye institution. Dilganga, as many of you know probably, is the name of the river that's along where this hospital was built. And in Hindu and Buddhist cultures, wherever there's a river, there's often a massive temple. This is the world's largest temple. Sanduk Ruit is famous in global ophthalmology. He spent a lot of time working with the Buddhist and Hindu priests here, such that every time a person came to the temple to have their body cremated, they would also call the eye banking specialists. The other major innovation that Dr. Ruit had was building HRCP, hospital-based recovery programs, and I'll mention that at the end of this talk. But working with the local cultures and customs is critical. India has had a long history. They got into the game of corneal transplantation internationally in the 60s, got involved in the policy associated with this that's my 6 minutes, got involved in the international policy and have developed a very successful, internally sustainable program. Because they don't want people selling their organs, they are not allowed to export corneas from India. Again, quickly, there's lots of research, not cultural or religious, but more information. It's about awareness. So we have to not point the finger at our religious leaders. We shouldn't point at cultures or ignorance. It's truly just about awareness, 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 awareness. And I'm going to hand it over to my partner in crime, Greg Schmidt, who has been doing this for 25 years and can speak intelligently about this.
So thank you for the wonderful introduction. Thank you for the invitation. I was actually asked to give a little bit about my experience in which I've recently had the opportunity, along with Dr. Matharu, to visit a couple eye banks in India. What's interesting is we actually, of one of the eye banks that we had visited, they had a visitor actually come to us in Iowa, and we were able to kind of give them a tour and experience of our processes here in the United States. And then when we had this opportunity for me to actually go over to India to visit, of course, we wanted to actually take advantage of that. I think it's really important to actually understand where our focus was. When I actually went over on this visit, it was to turn around and actually have a better understanding, understand the processes that were happening there, understand the culture of where I was going. Instead of just turning around and making changes, that was what I really wanted to avoid. I did not want to take what worked in the United States and implement it in India, because to me, that's just a foothold for failure. So I wanted to be able to turn around and go over and actually understand what was actually happening. So why we actually have chai time as our theme is to turn around, and one of the cultural things that I really took back and loved was that time, that chai time. It was like a break in the day, and I loved the discussions that we had that were really informal, and we just turned around and talked about multiple things, and it was just, for me, it was just you know, a little pillar of that cultural experience that I actually enjoyed. So as I mentioned, I'd actually spent 2 weeks in India, and I can turn around and basically talk about this for an hour, but given the amount of time, I just want to really highlight two things that we'd actually noticed that when we were over there. One actually being is, even though we were speaking English to each other, we actually had different interpretations for the words that we were using. As an example, when the team over there would actually turn around and talk about processing meant something different to me in the United States. And when we talk processing in the United States, we're talking about preparing DMEC and DSEC tissue for the OR, whereas over there in Pondicherry, processing meant that they were actually doing a corneal in situ. What was also interesting and beneficial for me was to actually watch some of those processes that they were doing, and instead of turning around and actually once again just saying this is what you should do, we would actually look at the process and see how we could actually modify and implement like best practices here over there. One of those things was like the warming of the tissue. In the United States, we use an incubator. They didn't have an incubator available. So once again, it's kind of the theme of chai time. They would actually warm up water in a kettle, and we would do a warm bath. That would actually warm up the cells, in which then, if you went to the next slide,
Sorry, Craig.
was doing specular imaging. And so they could actually get better images for their analysis of the specular cell counts. The other thing that was beneficial on this, and once again, it was also a language where the manufacturer recommends that 100 cells are counted. Well, the way it was interpreted there was that the analysis was 100, but that's not how the program set. So by actually identifying a few little things, we were actually able to have a major impact.
Greg took their numbers from about 2,000 cells to 3,000 cells. And if you were paying close attention to the previous lecture, that's the difference between needing to do full thickness transplants versus lamellar transplants, which are infinitely better for the patient.
Yeah. And what I was able to do was actually look at some of their images and analysis and actually show them where corrections could be made. That was important. You can't translate that over a Zoom call. It just really took me being there on hand to actually watch this. This is actually another picture that I actually enjoy. We dubbed this as, when we come up with our own little rock band, this is going to be the album cover. But I have a little bit of extensive experience, and so then I was actually able to also translate some of the processing that we do in the United States to the attendings and fellows and residents there.
Greg is the first
Once again,
eye bank
I could really
technician
get in depth
to,
on this, but I'm so restricted by time.
very briefly, Greg is the first eye bank technician to peel lamellar tissue. So what in America we've done is taken half the surgery, removed it from the surgeon's hands, have it done in the eye bank, so that increases our ability to perform the surgery, increase profits, et cetera, et cetera. So by having this exchange of information, we're changing their processes and sharing best practices from the States.
Yeah.
This is a far too busy slide. I apologize, but just very briefly, pearls from afar. This is a term that Greg taught me, which is mapping the cornea. And if you go step by step by step, you can look at every which way from recovering the cornea, from approaching the patient to recovering the cornea to processing tissue, which you could teach remotely, right, in a wet lab, to distribution. And this definitely can be done with lectures. And then ultimately look at this Indo-German cooperation in enhancing eye donation, right? This is easy, low-hanging fruit for publications, learn and share. Again, apologies for rushing through it, but I just wanted to say thank you. We're available for questions either here in the chat. These are our email addresses. It's an honor to present. It's an honor to partner with you guys. And thank you so much.
So one thing I want to add, Dr. Matharu, was what's interesting, and I think it's very important, as I heard a theme earlier, it's like, how do we increase donation? How do we, make the awareness available? What was interesting was actually, with me being there and being very curious and asking questions, that's where we had sat down, mapped out the cornea, and looked for areas in which this could be done. But by being on site and actually going to an outreach and looking at the programs that they actually have installed,
The
we
vision
were
centers,
able to make
primary centers, secondary
modifications.
centers.
And yes, at the centers. And with the technology that they have, and say it would be easier just to implement this, or you could do this way, rather than just giving them examples of how we do it in the States, because that doesn't fit. But it can be modified to fit within the system there. I'm sorry to add that.
That's a very good point. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Schmidt and Dr. Matharu, for this presentation. Dr. Matharu, I have a follow-up question, though. So we've been talking a little bit about engaging religious leaders and scholars in the country and trying to propagate the message. You mentioned Nepal's experience a little bit of how they would have people go to the temples to actually retrieve the cornea. What lessons do you think we as Pakistanis can learn from other similar countries like India and Nepal who have successfully overcome a shortage of corneal donors within their country by increasing awareness and engaging stakeholders and scholars and various leaders in the country?
Listening to Professor Asad, I think the main lesson I'd like to share with you is that this did not happen overnight. It took repeated interventions, efforts, lifts, right? So Dr. Asad has laid the groundwork so that when you go speak with your religious leaders, you say that, hey, we have the infrastructure, we have the technology, we're doing this, but right now we are dependent on external sources, right? And it just takes multiple points. So the story of Nepal, which I condensed into 30 seconds, is one that lasted over 5 to 10 years and involved radio personalities, involved extensive amounts of political negotiations. In the story in India, perhaps you might be familiar with Vishal Jhanji. He is a big name in American cornea now. He trained at Ames. Having him speak when I was a cornea fellow with him, he would get emotional about when he first started to approach patients requesting their corneas in India, right? And so we can point to India's current eye banking system as a relative success, but it did not come without a lot of pain and a lot of effort along the way. Same thing in Sri Lanka, same thing, et cetera, et cetera. In sub-Saharan Africa, they are now engaging their local political leaders, their local religious leaders. But I just would like to point out that a lot of this takes a lot of time and effort. So we are so lucky that you are engaging with ARVO and with the local future leaders of Pakistani healthcare, right? That's what we expect of King Edward Medical School to be able to accomplish. And so engaging with you guys at an early age so that you can use the rest of your career to advocate, implement policy changes, and go forward and use your immense amounts of talent.
Thank you so much. That was very inspirational and very good to know that this is a long term process and we're making some steps forward. There's also going to be a lot of steps backward in the process, but as long as we're making progress, it should all be good. And with that, I'd like to invite our next speaker, Dr. Muhammad Sultan, also an alumnus of King Edward Medical University, class of 1983. He is currently the head of ophthalmology department at Independent Medical College in Faisalabad. He is also the vice chairman and founder of the Lalpur Eye Trust, which, as Dr. Asad mentioned before and we touched upon, is currently the only successfully running hospital-based corneal retrieval program in Pakistan. Over 600 corneal transplants have been performed within his hospital, and up till now, more than 300 corneas have actually been harvested from local donors under this program. Dr. Sultan was also head of ophthalmology department at the Punjab Medical College in Faisalabad. And he also started pediatric ophthalmology and vitreoretinal surgery subspecialty training programs within that institution. Dr. Sultan, thank you so much for taking out your time and for joining us today. I have a lot of questions for you, but we are a little short on time. So I will start with my major question: that how did you start this your very successful corneal retrieval program? How and when did you start this? And what were some of the challenges that you overcame in order to establish this?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much. I feel very honored to be in this seminar, in this webinar, and I'm very much thankful to Dr. Sabah, Dr. Asad, and Dr. Fawad to include me in this webinar. So far as how I got inspired and what were the hurdles, see, I worked with Dr. Asad in KE Medical College, King Edward Institute of Ophthalmology, under the leadership of Professor Munirul Haq. I was doing fellowship over there. Me and Dr. Asad remained from 1988 to 1991, for 3 years over there. And the way of working of Professor Munir and the hardships, the devotions, the determinations, and the motivation, we got it from Professor Emeritus, both Asad and me. So when I became professor in 2003 in Punjab Medical College and came to deliver, so I started thinking, how can I deliver? So I started all this. I built my department, and also I felt that the cornea is a specialty which is being neglected all over the country, and there are huge magnitude of the patients in the country, and they remain untreated. See, just in Faisalabad region, 56,000 people are corneal blind. 56,000 people. And there are so many people coming to the ward with the refractory corneal ulcers, perforations, melting, because whenever they feel some problem in the eye, they just go to the pharmacist or medical store, and they give them methicillor, which contains dexamethasone and chloramphenicol. They start using it, and the cornea melts away, and and becomes refractory to treatment. And we put a complete one bay for reserved one bay for the corneal ulcers, and that was big number of patients. So I started thinking, how can we retrieve the cornea, because the cornea was not available in Pakistan in 2012. No donation from Dr. Zafar or from any other country. There were some people, some organizations were getting the cornea from Sri Lanka, Lions Club, through Lions Club, and they were the donors, and all that was donation from outside. From within the country, there was no retrieval program. So I started thinking that how can I build it? Then I contacted Fred Hollows Foundation, and they were very generous people. They contacted us with the Tilganga Institute of Ophthalmology. Me and my team went over there 2-3 times, lived over there, learned and how the Nepal Eye Bank is working, and how they are harvesting the corneas from their people. So I then started the same program here in Faisalabad, and Alhamdulillah, that is going well. Up till now, we have retrieved 600 corneas from our local people, 650 rather. So it's a big achievement, at least. So far as the hurdles are concerned, see, there are a lot of problems, no doubt. First was, there was no precedence, no example for me how to make retrieval of the cornea, what structure should I have, what organization should I make, like that. Since there was no example, there was no working retrieval program in the whole of the country at that time, in 2012. So I started 2012 in corneal transplantation. 2016, we established the Lipor Eye Trust, and corneal retrieval program we started in 2018, and it is successfully being managed. There are a lot of cultural, religious, social, legal problems, a lot of myths and beliefs of the people, which are no doubt big hurdles, but these hurdles are to be overcome. And I don't think we cannot do it. We can do it. If I, sitting in Faisalabad, can manage to harvest the cornea in hundreds, why not in Lahore? Why not in Karachi? Why not in Peshawar and Rawalpindi? So there are a lot of scope in our country, and see, this is a country of 250 million people, and the only thing, there are hurdles, but these hurdles are to overcome and solve. So we are managing it, and Alhamdulillah, it is working well.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Sultan, for sharing your experiences. Honestly, it's very inspiring for me, and I'm sure for our audience as well. Very inspiring to see how you took the initiative, you understood that problem, and you went out of your way to learn from other organizations, from the Fred Hollows Institute, from Nepal. You took that experience, you brought it back to Pakistan and used that experience to establish something in Pakistan that is working, sustainable, and actually helping our population. I think that's remarkable. That's very inspiring for me. And I hope our audience can also, at the end of the session, take that lesson home with them and feel inspired to make contributions in whatever field they choose. Hopefully they choose ophthalmology, but even if they don't, whatever field they choose, use those lessons to work towards progress within Pakistan. Sir, one of my questions, just we talked about some of your challenges and barriers. How did you address the religious aspect or the cultural aspect when you talk to patients? How do you address their concerns, and what do you tell them to convince them to become organ donors?
Yeah, this is a question which is this is a topic rather to be discussed everywhere whenever the retrieval of the cornea or the cornea donation is concerned. See, Dr. Munirul Haq and Professor Ali Kuli Khan, who was our teacher of teachers, they started cornea transplantation in King Edward Medical College, Mayo Hospital, in 70s and 80s, right? And then a book was published by Mufti Shafi from Karachi, who is the father of Mufti Taqi Usmani at the moment. And that book was, that I have a book here, that was about the organ transplantation. According to the verdict, they said that this is haram, this is forbidden, and this will be punishable in the world hereafter. So they stopped doing it. But later on, this was the concept of the religious people, like so many other concepts, like blood donation, like use of loudspeakers, like taking pics and photographs, like similarly organ transplantation. But now the things have been changed altogether. Now, 90% of the religious scholars, they have written down books. I have collected all those books in my trust, and we got verdicts from various scholars, and those people are now saying yes, it can be done. See, in our worship or in our virtues, we have got categorization. First is first. It is an absolute obligation, right, to do a thing. Then is sunnah, that is partial obligation. Then is nafil, that is optional altogether. Then is mustahab. That mustahab means if you do something, some virtue, it is good. You will be rewarded positively. And if you don't, it doesn't matter. And mubah. Below mustahab, there is mubah. Mubah means you do it or you don't do it. Just like traveling a train, like traveling a camel, like traveling anywhere. So it is, so all scholars, all Islamic scholars, they are agreed that taking corneas or taking organs from the people, this is mubah. This is not a thing which is punishable. This is not a punitive thing. This is not a bad thing. But the majority of the ulama are still saying that this is mustahab because it is not only allowed, but also it is recommended. It is recommended, and it is you will be rewarded in the world hereafter if you do it. See, Asad has said that he has arranged a seminar. Another seminar was arranged in Institute of Urology in Karachi by Professor Adib Rizvi. And all the scholars, Islamic scholars throughout the country, they were present over there, including the chairman Nazriyati Council, Islamic Ideology Council, and all the scholars. And they all agreed on this point that donation or donating a tissue or cornea is permissible, and it should be advocated, it should be spread, the message should be spread, and the people, if you donate your organ to another person, you will be given reward for it in the world hereafter. So this is this religious myth has has been altogether now abandoned and has been removed. And now the only problem is that we are unable to give this awareness to common people that this is not the problem. Then the religious scholars are saying, we have to accept it. So this is and we got various verdicts from various scholars from Karachi, from Multan, from Lahore, from Faisalabad, and we have got all those verdicts, and we provided it to human organ transplant authorities as well, and they are publishing it on the paper, on newspapers that are coming.
So that is a very important point that you mentioned here, that this misconception that there's this of this being impermissible in Islam, and this misconception has to be addressed. That is our main issue, that we, our scholars are promoting this, major religious organizations are in support of this, and actually, as you mentioned, are saying that this is something that can be rewarded. But the barrier now is awareness and bringing this message to the common people, to the public. And I think it's very important, and everybody in the audience, this is something that we all can work towards. We can educate ourselves, first of all, and this is one step to that. So you all hear what Dr. Sultan mentioned. We shared some links in the chat too, and we'll email you those links as well, a compilation of fatwas and religious rulings by scholars. So educate yourself, first of all, and know that this is encouraged within our religion. And the next step is to bring that knowledge to other people as well, to talk to your family, talk to your friends, and as doctors and as medical students, as trainees, talk to your patients and encourage them and try to address and overcome these barriers. Because I think we kind of, through this webinar, we've established that we have the infrastructure, we have the personnel, we have people successfully retrieving corneas. We know that our religious scholars are in support of this. The issue now is to bring awareness to the public, to convince people and make them understand how important that is. Dr. Sultan, just another follow-up question related to that. As I kind of mentioned that these are some things that we can do, what in your perception, in your experience, what can we do as medical students, as trainees? How can we best propagate this message?
Yes, one thing more I want to add. See, in Faisalabad here, there is a guy, Dr. Sharif. He did PhD in organ transplant in Islam. Here 20 years back. From his PhD thesis is with me. I collected it, and he's the man who participates in our rallies and gives motivational speeches to the rallies. See, this is not a thing which is being neglected here, but we are still lagging behind, lot of lagging behind the scope and the pace of the work. And that's why we are suffering. So far as the awareness is concerned, yes, of course, the awareness can be done by hoardings, by pamphlets, by books, by spreading knowledge, by spreading this message to our colleagues, to our families, to our friends and relatives, and by social media, and the mass awareness program. The rallies are to be held, the seminars can be conducted. And this is the major issue. Otherwise, no hurdles. I don't think any hurdles. The only thing is that we are unable to persuade the people. Otherwise, if we are successfully persuading them, they are ready to donate. See, our eye donation counselors, we have got, in our trust, we have got 6-7 eye donation counselors. They go to the relatives of the diseased person, persuade them, show them pics, show them the waiting list, and tell them, and they answer their questions, and they get motivated on that, and they permit and they allow us to harvest the cornea from the people. So the only thing is that we should take steps on material, on concrete grounds, so that the eye banking and retrieval of one thing more, Dr. Asad has said that for taking cornea, you have to take the whole of the eye. No, we went to Nepal. They do not take the whole of the eye. They just take the corneoscleral button. what we do here in retrieving the cornea, we take the corneoscleral button, we put a corneal cap, which has got a conical pegs, and they pierce on the undersurface of the lids and do not let the cornea. So there is no, do not let the eyes to be collapsed or to be opened. So while doing ritual bathing, there is no problem. There is no disfigurement. But if we ask the people to drain the whole of the eyeball, and we are going to take the whole of the eyeball, they become horrified. Right? We just say, no, we are just removing a small piece which is in front of a small jhilli, a small membrane. We have to take from your eye, from the patient's eye. So the majority of the time they do agree. But if we ask them to take the whole of the eye, we have to take the whole of the eye, they get embarrassed, right? They horrified. So corneoscleral button, taking the corneoscleral button is as good as taking the whole of the eye. The only thing is you keep it immediately in the preservative solution, and you can keep it for 10 to 14 days easily. So
that's a very important point, Dr. Sultan. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's also one of, and we, within the like before the seminar, we kind of collected survey responses from people. And I think this is an issue that people think about and, as you mentioned, are horrified by at some times, and can be a major determined for them to sign up for corneal transplant, thinking that this will cause disfigurement, that the eyes will actually be gone. So that's very important to know, that we don't have to take all the whole of the eye. You can just take off that front clear part, that the cornea, and leave the rest of the eyeball in place, and it should not cause any issues or disfigurements. I think that's very important to know. Sir, how can other ophthalmologists in Pakistan, how can other institutions learn from your example? And if somebody wants to set a corneal retrieval program or start working towards that within their city, what next steps should they take? And is there any advice you have for them?
See, it is very simple, very, very simple. Just make a team of donors. The only problem is the financial resources. And the financial resources can be easily managed by philanthropists. There are so many philanthropists in our country, in every country, in every city, who are ready to donate. And people are donating millions and millions of rupees. But the only thing is, they are not aware of that this is the aspect where they can invest and they can donate, because they are not aware of this thing. Resultantly, there is deficiency on this aspect. Otherwise, the people are ready to donate. Just make a team of donors and then start working. The working is only you take one manager who can manage and coordinate, and one data operator who can put all these documents ready and in writing, and eye donation counselors. These eye donation counselors, they go to the bedside, to the patients, and this is possible in public hospitals. In public hospitals where the people come with the terminal diseases and the mortality rate is very high. So the people die over there. And if they are free of communicable diseases, which we dig it out and probe before we take on harvest or we communicate our message to their relatives, we screen it out, and the eye donation counselors, then after the death of the patient, they communicate with the relatives and ask them that this is the problem, and we are going to take the cornea. So they agree, and immediately we take it.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Noor, can I just add a couple of things?
Yes.
So my name is Fawad Zafar, and we've been sending corneas to Pakistan since April 2017. So this year, in April 2025, will be 8 years that we've been sending corneas. By the end of December 2024, we've crossed the 8,000 limit of corneas that we have sent so far. Dr. Sultan was one of the first doctors we were sending corneas to, but pretty quickly into the program, he advised us that he's now self-sufficient and he doesn't need any corneas coming from the US. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zafar, for sharing that. I think
one thing I want to clarify here. See, Fawad Zafar has been doing it and contributed. It's a great contribution, no doubt. And with this, with the sending corneas from abroad, many doctors have emerged as very good corneal specialists and corneal surgeons, right? There is a good advancement in the field of cornea in Pakistan with the supply of the cornea. But this supply of the cornea from abroad, without harvesting from our own, has become a big hurdle as well in stepping forward in this retrieval program, right? This has become a sweet poison, rather, I must say, right? And the people say, that's okay, we'll wait, and 5 corneas will come after 1 month or so. Why not to start their own corneas? 5, 6 corneas, 5 to 10 corneas is not a problem to harvest, to get it done from in any public hospital. So this is my perspective on this issue.
yes,
I
that's
agree
a
with
great
you.
point. Yeah, there's like, sorry, Dr. Zafar, go on.
Oh, I totally agree with you that this has been a hurdle. What we thought we were trying to help, our main concern was we want to help the poor patients because corneal disease in Pakistan is mostly of the poor patients. People who are learning how to do welding, they have no OSHA rules and regulations, and a spark goes into the eye and the eye is toast. Farmers and what have you. So. This was our aim, but I would concur with Dr. Sultan that that has really slowed down any incentive to do local cornea retrievals. And while, we're happy with what we've done, I don't think this is a sustainable program. We have spent close to $2.85 million, $2,850,000, which we have raised and sent the corneas to Pakistan. But this is not a long-term situation.
Yeah, that's a very good point. There's, and as Dr. Matharu also mentioned, some of the ethical issues with transnational corneal donations, it can be a hurdle for local efforts, which is why I think it's very important for us to start talking about this, at least propagate the message, spread awareness. We have in our audience, like right now, we have 140 people in our audience who are all medical students, trainees, not only from Pakistan, actually there are some participants from India, from the US. So all of these people from around the world, it's very important for us to at least spread that message, know that this is something that we can overcome, we can work towards, and we have examples in our country. We have Dr. Sultan who has done this. We have Dr. Asad Aslam, his experience, all of his efforts in establishing this, and learning from that experience and knowing now that the things that we have to overcome right now are spreading awareness, breaking those barriers, getting this message across to the local people, and also doing what we can in order to build programs within our capacity as much as we can, and like being inspired to take the next step as we progress in our careers. I think that's very important. Dr. Sultan, I have one last question for you, and then we will sort of wrap up our seminar. Last question, in your mind, what are some of the future directions, and where do you see the future of your corneal transplant retrieval program and the future of corneal retrieval in Pakistan?
So far as the retrieval program, our own program, it is a sustainable program, right? It is a structured program. The donors, they are very generous people, and they are very committed. And moreover, we are working under the shadow of district administration. And this district administration is always taking a great pride in mentioning it. And that's why they will go on, they will keep this program alive. I'm present or not present, this will not matter at all. Anybody will come and this program will continue. But so far as in the rest of the institutions are concerned, we have to have leaders, the people who are committed, motivated, and working for the good, for the humanity. If we don't have that, the situation is great disappointment.
That's a very good point. Dr.
This
Sultan,
is
thank you so much. But just wrapping up, I'm going to share my screen for a minute just so that kind of share some resources on how we can be involved more. So as we mentioned, I think we've talked about this throughout this webinar enough, but these are some resources. Our EyeRIS admins will also be sharing these links in the chat, and we will be sending those out as an email to everybody who registered. This is the first QR code. The first link is from Dr. Sultan's Layalpur Eye Trust website that have compiled Islamic rulings and fatwas on the topic for anybody who wants to educate themselves, their family, and their patients. They can use that resource to learn what the Islamic ruling is and address some of those religious barriers and misconceptions, I would say. The other, we have our email address where you can email if you're interested to be a corneal donor at the College of Ophthalmology and Allied Vision Sciences in Lahore in Punjab. And then we have 2 more QR codes where you can find out more and sign up to be an eye donor with LRBT Eye Hospital. They have several branches in Lahore as well as Karachi, and Al Shifa Trust as well. And then we will also share within the first link, you will go to the Layalpur Eye website, and there's phone numbers that you can call, contact, and ask to become an eye donor. If you are from the Faisalabad region, you can contact Layalpur Eye Trust and learn how to be an eye donor and how to sign up for that as well. And of course, for all of our registrants, our participants, it would be super helpful if you could use this link and our this QR code, and our admins will share that link as well to fill out our post-webinar survey so that we can learn how this has been helpful, how this has shaped your perceptions, and kind of see what we can do more as further steps, get some information from our audience and tailor further experiences based on what you guys would like to learn more and have more questions about. Obviously, follow EyeRIS. We will keep posting more educational resources on how to be more involved and how we can learn more about corneal donation in Pakistan. Before we wrap up, let's just give a couple minutes for anybody in the audience who has any questions for our speakers. Let us know. You can add some questions in the chat as well. But do we have any questions from the audience at this point? I have to look at the chat here. See if we have. We have Osama Rahim, who has mentioned in the chat that he's a registered corneal transplant surgeon now working at Alam Iqbal Teaching Hospital in Dera Ghazi Khan and trying to start a corneal transplantation. That's amazing, very commendable. I hope that with this webinar, you can be introduced to some of the people who are already working in this regard, such as Dr. Sultan, Dr. Asad, and help foster more collaborations through this webinar. So that would be amazing. We have some other questions. Are individuals who have undergone vision correction surgeries like LASIK or PRK eligible for corneal donation? Can one of our...
Yes, they're available for endothelial corneal transplantation.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much, Dr. Matharu, for this. I guess we are also, how can first year or second year med students help for this cause? So as we mentioned, talk to people, educate yourself, educate your family, your patients, learn more about this, spread the word. We know now that we have systems in place. We have people who can help with corneal retrieval. We have the infrastructure. We are progressing towards enhancing that, making more, breaking more barriers, creating more, but we have that basic thing in place. The question is, can we encourage enough people to start donating, start signing up, and help save lives. And hopefully this can be one step towards a bigger initiative. We will keep doing this. We will keep spreading the word. We will keep engaging med students, trainees, hopefully even policymakers. Inshallah, we'll keep doing this. Thank you so much again, everybody, for joining. Thank you so much to our speakers. And with that, we'll end the meeting. Thank you so much.